Mexico's president applauds citizens for obeying lockdown regulations. World leaders congratulate South Africa as it marks 26 years since the end of apartheid. And the extradition case for the WikiLeaks founder is delayed. Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. We begin in Mexico. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says the country is on track to bring the COVID-19 pandemic under control due to measures adopted by the government.
Vamos bien.
We are doing well because it has been possible to tame the epidemic instead of it exploding, as has unfortunately happened elsewhere. Here the growth has been horizontal.
Primero agradeciendo.
We are grateful to the public because they continue to comply with the measures to the letter, and that has helped us a lot. So we do not have an overflow. The hospitals are not saturated.
The government of Paraguay has announced that classes at all educational establishments have been suspended until December as a preventive measure against the spread of the coronavirus.
We have come to report a decision we have taken with the Education Minister, following health protocols, and as the governing body of public policy, in this case the Health Ministry, to postpone in-person classes until December.
20 poor districts of the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo have seen a 45% increase in the COVID-19 death toll in just a week. Our correspondent in Brazil, Brian Meir, has the details.
I'm standing on the north side of Sao Paulo near the neighborhood of Brasilândia, which is the hardest hit region in the city of Sao Paulo. Now, it's an area of massive favelas and working class housing subdivisions, and it's recorded the highest number of cases. But it's important to remember when you look at the media attention given to Sao Paulo and coronavirus that 1 in 5 Brazilians live in the state of Sao Paulo. And if you look at the per capita data on the pandemic, you can see that there are other states in Brazil that have higher per capita infection and death rates, and these are among the most poor states in the country. For example, Amazonas, in the Amazon region, the public hospital system's ICU wards have been packed at 100% capacity for over a week now. And the states of Ceará and Pernambuco, also in the impoverished Northeast, have their ICU wards with 100% occupancy as well. So it's important to note that although the coronavirus was originally brought to Brazil by the middle class, it seems to be spreading the hardest and the fastest right now in the poorest areas of the country.
That was Brian Meir from Brazil. Social organizations in Argentina are carrying out activities to help citizens cope with the health crisis due to COVID-19.
The poor sectors work and provide the most so those in vulnerable situations can be protected from the pandemic.
We don't have a large industry for these products, so we started to work with the armament, with various ministries. A large number of unions in Buenos Aires also came together to produce protective equipment for health workers.
Social leaders agree that the work of labor unions now is key.
We inherited a crisis from the Macri administration. By making a huge effort, we've managed to enter the quarantine with 417 food kitchens, which have gone up to 550.
Their work is a product of organization by various social and political sectors in coordination with the state.
Our textile unions are working to sell their products to state institutions. We are also selling to private buyers, and we are providing people with food and face masks, our neighbors mostly.
Many agree that this is an elemental stage to promote solidarity and a new form of organizing.
The class struggle did not start with the pandemic, and it's not going to end with it either. The popular sectors need to organize better. We need more solidarity. We need a project that places the redistribution of wealth at the forefront, and that guarantees employment. We can't get out of this if people have work, and also we need to consider what someone once called a 50-50 split in rent payments.
There is a quote by the late leader Juan Perón, who also said that in the brotherhood of workers will be the base for a united homeland for all Argentinians.
The UN Children's Fund is stepping up delivery of health and hygiene items for families and health workers in 12 Latin American and Caribbean countries affected by the pandemic. A statement by UNICEF said despite extreme market conditions and logistical constraints, the organization is planning to ship about 52 tons of vital supplies, including face masks, disposable face shields, and goggles. Venezuelan authorities announced an economic plan to control speculation and induced inflation in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Safeguarding access to food is one of the most important tasks of the Bolivarian government, but people are concerned about an increase in prices that has been ongoing over the last few weeks.
It's very expensive, but if you want to survive, you have to pay. We cannot start a boycott, as some say.
This inflation in the price of food led to government intervention.
I think their plan is good. If they'll intervene to regulate prices, then I agree.
Authorities allowed state intervention in a number of companies, as well as the expropriation of land to ensure fair prices and a steady stream of supplies.
We are establishing food pricing mechanisms with the main producers. We've been meeting for 3 days, and I know where the most critical issues are, as well as the main effects of this speculative false economy.
Hyperinflation is one of the main issues caused by price speculation at the hands of large private companies. This on top of an illegal exchange rate for the dollar caused by websites on social media accounts, which further devaluates the local currency to the tune of 131% in April and 178% since the quarantine started.
They know they have from top to bottom, first the farmer, the slaughterhouse, the distributor, this due to the dollar, because most people don't use the central bank exchange rate, but the illegal rates which are much higher.
We are not going to allow speculators to take advantage of this global situation. It's time for solidarity and for humanity. It's time to consider what is going on around the world and how we are living through it, and how they're risking people's lives.
The government will soon provide a new pricing scheme for all producers.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be right back. U.S. government continues to deport citizens to El Salvador. Meanwhile, over 4,000 Salvadorans are stuck outside their country and are asking for support from their government.
The Salvadoran Institute of Migration provides medical attention for nationals who have returned from the United States. Many of them have chronic diseases which are aggravated by their deportation.
Their emotional state is in shambles, and they need to be put under quarantine by law. So, they come here after having been imprisoned for 6 to 8 months and arrive to another lockdown. But still, the quarantine is a must to determine whether they have been infected.
Food and medicine and books are provided for them, but these citizens have, for the most part, not received emergency funds offered by the President Nayib Bukele.
We are grateful for this help because we haven't received any benefit or any money. I have found myself in very bad situation because we have nothing. We have only received help from these charitable souls.
On top of these ongoing deportations, around 4,500 Salvadorans have been stuck outside the country after the national airport was closed down.
We cannot deny entry to any citizen. The Constitutional Court has decreed that after a habeas corpus request by some of those who are abroad. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has also spoken on this subject, as well as most international bodies. They are hoping President Bukele will respond favorably, as he has been acting in a dictatorial manner.
After the presidential veto, the legislative decree that regulated the return of Salvadorans during the health emergency, the Foreign Ministry announced a repatriation plan that will be put into effect starting May 1st.
In other news, South Africa is marking the annual Freedom Day, under the theme Solidarity and Triumph of the Human Spirit in Challenging Times. It is celebrated every year on April 27 and commemorates the country's first democratic election in 1994, the first time that non-white citizens were allowed to vote. That election saw Nelson Mandela replace Frederick de Klerk to become South Africa's first black president. In a televised speech, President Ramaphosa paid tribute to the country's freedom fighters.
On this day, 26 years ago, a new nation was born in Africa. On the 27th of April 1994, the men, women, and children of South Africa emerged from the dark veil of oppression to stand in the light of freedom. As millions cast their votes for the first time, they boldly declared to the world that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. The price of our freedom was paid by generations of patriots. Today we pay tribute to the great leaders who resisted colonial domination and who fought for our liberation, both those who have left us and those who are still living.
And the government of Nicaragua has conveyed fraternal greetings to President Ramaphosa and the people of South Africa on the 26th anniversary of the end of apartheid. President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo paid homage to the sacrifices made by the African National Congress. They also reiterated their commitment to strengthening bilateral ties. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza announced President Nicolás Maduro held a phone call with President Ramaphosa. He said they share their experiences in containing COVID-19 and agreed on joint bilateral and multilateral cooperation. Our collaborator in South Africa, Clever Banganayi, spoke with Cuba's ambassador about the medical cooperation and the historic relationship between the two countries.
In response to a request made by the government of South Africa, Cuba decided to support the great efforts already underway here to contain the coronavirus. So we have, just a few hours ago, we have received a Cuban medical brigade. We are so glad of the coincidence that our medical doctors just arrived in a very special day in the history of South Africa, which is 27th of April, Freedom Day. Today we are commemorating the defeat of the apartheid and the beginning of a new and free South Africa. So the brigade is integrated by 217 healthcare specialists, which include family physicians, epidemiologists, healthcare technology engineers, biotechnologists, among others. And they will be deployed very soon in the whole provinces of South Africa to assist in the fight against coronavirus. We are doing so because for us, the only answer, the only way to defeat coronavirus at the global level is cooperation and international solidarity. And in the case of South Africa, we have even more reason to do so, given the very special and deep relations of friendship and cooperation between Cuba and South Africa. Relations that were consolidated many years ago during the contribution of Cuban internationalist combatants in Africa. You know, Cuba lost the life of 2,289 internationalist combatants for the liberation of many countries in Africa, including the defeat of the apartheid.
Meanwhile, South Africa's opposition leader Julius Malema has cautioned world leaders against lifting COVID-19 restrictions before the disease is fully contained.
We want to urge our governments and governments across the world to prioritize human life over profit and egos at this time. We want to remind our government that there is no economy without people. And any easing of economy to combat the spread of coronavirus must be based on the science and not profit.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Thank you for joining us again. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has announced the gradual phasing out of the country's lockdown in the cities of Lagos and Abuja from May 4th.
I have approved a phased and gradual easing of lockdown measures in FCT, Lagos, and Ogun states effective from Monday, 4th of May 2020. However, this will be followed strictly with aggressive reinforcement of testing and contact tracing measures while allowing the restoration of some economic and business activities in certain sectors.
Meanwhile, Lagos residents have welcomed the state government's decision to make the wearing of face masks mandatory. On Sunday, the governor of Lagos declared that wearing face masks in public was now compulsory, and that failure to do so will follow a fine. The number of confirmed cases in the city stands at 731, more than half of the confirmed cases in Nigeria.
Why I'm wearing the face mask is because of the virus in the country now, the COVID-19, and it's throughout the whole world. So I advise the fellow Nigerians to wear the mask because of the virus, because the spreading of the virus is getting more every day.
Our country should start wearing it because it's going to protect the virus. So I have to follow the law.
Italy's Ministry of Health reported that 1,739 new coronavirus cases have been confirmed in the last 24 hours, the lowest day-to-day number since the lockdown. Italy has registered 333 deaths since Sunday evening, raising the total of the death count of the cases to 26,977.
We are going toward a decrease, but the virus is still circulating because we still have new cases, while the number of deaths is due to the tail of infections we had several weeks ago.
And Spain has announced an additional 331 COVID-19 deaths, bringing the total to more than 23,000. The health ministry has, however, started easing lockdown conditions.
In addition, we have, unfortunately, as usual, 331 new deaths. We have already seen several days below 300. It is always a sad fact, but of course, the evolution has an effect or has a clear comparability with the evolution of new cases that is clearly downward, and that obviously gives us hope. The evolution of the last days is still downward, so we will be relatively quick to give information. Today we have 1,831 new cases compared to yesterday, which is an increase of 0.9%.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says her administration has made significant progress in containing the COVID-19 pandemic.
There is no widespread undetected community transmission in New Zealand. We have won that battle, but we must remain vigilant if we're to keep it that way. It is not and cannot be a return to pre-COVID-19 life. That day will come, but it is not here yet. To get there, our team of 5 million needs to have zero tolerance for cases to complete our goal of eliminating the virus at level 3. If you're unwell, stay home. If you have a runny nose, a sore throat, a cough, get a test. Let's make sure that we keep those testing rates up. We continue with our contact tracing and isolation. That's how we'll finish this job.
In the United States, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that on May 15th, a few businesses in specific regions will be allowed to reopen. This will be done in phases, as long as there is a consistent decline in number of COVID-19 cases leading up to the date.
The pause is statewide until May 15th, right? Then you have the CDC guidance that says total hospitalization is declining for 14 days, okay? Phase 1 of reopening will involve construction and manufacturing activities. Phase 2 would then be more a business-by-business analysis using the matrix that we've discussed. How essential a service does that business provide, and how risky is that business?
British bank HSBC has told customers in the UK that it will stop processing payments to the Palestinian aid charity platform Interpol starting next month. The bank has sent letters to account holders who make regular donations in support of the London-based charity, informing them of the decision, but gave no reason for taking the action. Interpol was founded 25 years ago and is one of the leading British charities providing aid to Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza, and in refugee camps in Lebanon and Jordan. The extradition case for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will be delayed over concerns about his ability to attend hearings in person amid the UK's COVID-19 lockdown. A judge ruled that his hearing, which was due to begin next month, will not go ahead as the coronavirus pandemic prevented him from meeting his lawyers. A new schedule for the case will be agreed at another hearing on May 4th. Assange is currently detained in a London prison as he fights an extradition request by the United States to stand trial on espionage charges. Yemen's Southern Transitional Council has declared self-rule of the country's southern region following the collapse of a peace deal signed with the internationally recognized government last November. The council has accused the government of failing to perform its duties and neglecting their region. Separatists in the south, which used to be an independent country, have repeatedly agitated to break away again.
As citizens, the decision of the Southern Transitional Council is the right one because we are suffering too much from the lack of services and the bad management of the resources in the south. The lack of electricity, the lack of salaries, the disasters we are facing without any support from the legitimate government.
In the U.S., 5 people have been shot dead by an unknown gunman in Milwaukee. Local police found the victims inside a house after a man called 911 to report that his family was dead. The person who made the call has been detained and is in police custody pending investigations. A weapon believed to have been used by the shooter was found at the scene of the crime. And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find these and more stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.